My voice is audible? Sure. Thanks. Thanks a lot for confirming. So let's start the day, guys, so that we are on time. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone from all parts of the world who have registered for this great webinar, which is happening today. Hope you and your family are doing safe. Just to let you know that today is the last webinar for the year from AI Core Spot. And icing on the cake is that it's for the telecom industry. And we are really excited to host this. Now, to begin with, let me introduce myself and the company to you. My name is Nitin Naveen, and I'll be your host for the day. I'm working as Vice President Innovation Strategy at AI Core Spot. Further, I've been joined by my colleague Arvind and Naveen, who will also assist me in keeping the event lively and resolving technical glitches if it comes in between. So thanks a lot to them for putting in hard work and making this one a huge success. We'll try to provide a seamless experience to all of you so that you can gain maximum output out of the same. Let me provide a brief background to all of you about AI Core Spot. We started last year, so it's now a couple of years we are into the system, backed up by our InfoVision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7, who is our technology partner. Our mission is to serve as a hub for information regarding Industry 4.0 technologies. The focus is to provide all of you a deep dive in all the sectors wherever technology is there. And every month, the theme is different. Also, we are gaining momentum month on month. Our aim is to be number one AI-driven community all over the world so that like-minded people like you can be a part of the same in supporting, growing, and making it a success. We'll enrich the content through a lot of streams like digital blogs, podcasts, videos, newsletters to shed light on the ever-evolving industry. The focus is to do industry-backed webinars, hybrid events, and some face-to-face events which we are planning in 2023. The knowledge base will be made from reliable data through industry leaders, subject matter experts, thought leaders, and our partners InfoVision and Digit7. Today, we are having a lovely and unique webinar around the great theme which covers how to leverage the power of 5G. So if you want to know the impact of 5G technology in mobile networks, 5G encompassing mission-critical applications, improving efficiency, enhancing scalability and performance by leveraging 5G technology, and so on, then you are in the right place. We'll try to go all over it throughout the panel discussion and give lots of insights to you. There are lots more in store for next year with focus on banking, financial, insurance, telecom, healthcare, retail, supply chain, manufacturing, energy, utility, and so on. So request all of you to go through our website, which is aicorespot.io, for further updates. Also, please like our social media handles, which will keep you all updated on everything what we propose to offer in the coming months to follow. Before starting with this day, I would like to highlight a few things so that it can set up the tone for the amazing learning and networking day. Special mention about our knowledge and innovation partner, InfoVision, who has supported us since beginning and provided us the right support to bring the community together. InfoVision is an end-to-end IT and business services provider specializing in providing technology, transformation, and innovation projects for over 25 years now across multiple industries and serves 12 global locations, including US, Latin America, Middle East, and India. They also have a unique state-of-the-art research and innovation lab named Digit7 in Richardson, Texas, with 5 great innovative products. So to get in touch with them, kindly log on to the website, which is infovision.com, and leave your details through the contact us section. Now coming and moving on to our community partners for today, it includes 3 great companies, AT&T, Ookla, and CTIA, who came together to make this webinar a success. Special mention to attendees of the event who registered and came today to achieve their objectives through this forum. At the end of the day, if you gain few things out of this or get to network with each other, then our core objective as a platform will be achieved. Further, if anybody wants to ask questions, they can type it in the Q&A section, which is there at the right corner of the menu option. You can type in as and when the panel member speaks, and we'll try to get it answered as per the time permitted. There's also a hand button at the bottom of the screen through which you can even raise the hand and come to the stage in the video format to ask questions to speakers as well. Now, let me hand over the stage to Ashish, who is the Chief Business Officer handling telecom domain at InfoVision, and who is the moderator for this panel discussion as well. He's joined by 3 great leaders from the industry, Cliff, who is the Area Vice President, Mobility and IoT at AT&T. Then we have Kevin, who is Vice President at Ookla, and Michelle is there, who is Vice President, Strategic Industry Programs at CTIA. So over to you, Ashish, to begin this exciting panel discussion.
Thank you, Nitin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone on this panel today and on this forum today. It's my pleasure to host such a great speakers on this panel today. Um, I would encourage all the audiences to ask as many questions as possible so that you can get the best insights from these panelists. 5G has been a great transformation for telecom industry, and it is not only for telecom industry but it is across the enterprises. I personally feel till 4G it was all about network. But when the 5G was launched, it is all about the whole ecosystem. Billions and trillions of dollars have been spent across the world. Everyone is looking at from the spectrum to the network to the application. The whole ecosystem is being leveraged on the 5G. The companies like AT&T and other big operators across the globe, they are investing billions of dollars. How do you realize those investments? So we are going to talk about it. What is the real power of 5G? We will talk about it, and we will ask those questions from our great speakers today. There is also a lot of play in terms of how the 5G is going to be in next 2 to 3 years will look like, because the investments what the operators have made now, how do we realize that potential? And then of course people have already started talking about 6G now. So what happens to 5G? You know, so there are a lot of questions which are there in terms of what the 5G potential is, and also what the future lies from the 5G standpoint. I would like to start with Michelle. Michelle, you have been part of the CTIA driving strategy and innovation. We would like to hear from you from 4G to 5G. How do you see this transition? What are the great differences which are there, and how people can leverage 5G more better? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Awesome. And again, I'm also very proud to be with this panel today, and super grateful to talk about some basics relative to sort of what makes 4G different from 5G. At CTIA, we're the Wireless Trade Association, so we kind of have the luxury of sitting in a higher sort of catbox seat, if you will, looking at all of the innovation, both on the network side, the infrastructure side, the manufacturing community side, as well as those that are using the evolution of wireless technologies, even on the application side. We are in the middle of what will be a very transformative part of wireless. I can say that with confidence. I've been in the wireless industry since 1996. But, one of the things that we do is we also try and break down the alphabet soup that we often swim, not unlike any other industry segment, of acronyms that are relative to wireless technology. So, we really try and make sure that we share with everyone, what is the difference between 4G and 5G, kind of in layman's terms, right? So 5G uses 3 different types of spectrum. Spectrum is, for those of you who are not super close to our industry, that is the invisible radio waves on which mobile data travels. 5G includes low, mid, and high bands inside that spectrum. 4G networks, somewhat in contrast, primarily used low band spectrum. 5G will use a mix of all 3 bands. Even with just that alone, creates amazing amounts of efficiency and moving what will become massive amounts of data as we move to more connected communities, connected campuses, connected industrial manufacturing, basically a connected life. And so with that, the low band also provides foundational coverage. Mid band, which is kind of the sweet spot, and our opinion, my opinion, the sweet spot for 5G, the mid band enhances the coverage as well as boost the network's capability. So, and that is a term that we use in the industry, low latency. So lots of data is able to be computed at closer to wherever that use case is, just sort of in layman's terms. And of course, the high band uses millimeter wave technology, which are short radio waves measured in millimeters, to enhance network capabilities to a much broader area of coverage. The mix of all of these bandwidths add together the powerful new generation of wireless, advancing from 4G LTE to 5G, which will allow 5G to deliver 100 times higher bandwidth than 4G is able to deliver today, which is able to then support 100 times more connected devices. And a device could be a sensor, a meter, a camera, a phone. It isn't just about what's on your phone anymore. It's about all the things being connected and the data that's being transmitted between those things as we continue the build out for 5G.
A great insights. I think audiences would have learned a lot of things the way you have articulated. Thank you, Michelle. And that leads to a question, another question to Cliff. Michelle talked about sensors, connected devices, and the whole community is leveraging 5G. What are the different use cases across industries which AT&T is focusing on? Because end of the day, consumers are not going to pay the fee for 5G. It's all going to come from the enterprises. And there are different, and that's the power of, you are able to bring 5G to the edge, you are deploying MEC, and you are able to create a real-time use cases. So can you give us the view in terms of what you see across the industry, different use cases are there?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's a lot of use cases for 5G. Michelle alluded the different capabilities across the spectrum bands that we talked about. But in of itself, right, let's talk about in the manufacturing facility, because 5G allows greater capacity to ingest as many devices, and Michelle alluded to it. This could be sensors, this could be anything, right? So, and the low latency available in 5G enables a lot of these devices to kind of be smart about it. So in the manufacturing floor, where we're seeing 5G really occur today, is the use of 5G in robotics, for instance. So basically, the robot is pretty smart. It's telling it has a scanner sometimes, or even a video camera to see the QA of the item or the stuff that it's making. But it also has the ability to have some predictive maintenance in terms of now monitors and sensors within that robot is being able to be ingested, and it's seeing kind of how the robot's performance is. And obviously in Industry 4.0, that's really critical, right? To look at the efficiencies of the operations from the manufacturing equipment that's there too. And you also look at these autonomous, whether it's forklifts or these robots that carry, parts from one section or the other. In many cases, Wi-Fi just kind of bumps into it. So you see these little robots kind of moving across the manufacturing floor, somewhat really moving extremely slow because of the latency issues and the lack of capacity on a Wi-Fi infrastructure. 5G takes that away, so they're able to move faster and smoother. Now in the healthcare, we're using actually, we've seen cases not only for monitoring health, the health of the patients using 5G, but the use of AR, VR. In the use of VR, and this is it's a great concept for children who are actually, let's say, suffering from cancer. They're going through some therapy. They basically use VR goggles to essentially allow the children to focus on other things while they're getting their treatment. But that has some unique ramifications to using VR AR, where a specialist, let's say on the other part of the country, is able to look at what a surgeon particularly is looking at with a particular patient and guiding that patient along the way. And that has its ramifications on the healthcare industry. So and now and even in terms of the utility industry, where as well as the the energy industry, oil and gas, they're actually using 5G to look at the safety of their employees, so that as they walk along the planks to look at things or items that needs to be fixed, they can actually not only have a monitor if a man down situation comes in that tells that this individual's down, but it also has AR goggles that as they're fixing a particular item, its digital twin, if you will, is being presented to another specialist, and they're able to see what that technician is working on to be able to fix whatever the problem is. So those are just a minor aspects of the capabilities of 5G, just because of its capacity and latency that's attributable to that capability.
No, great examples, and in fact, the opportunities are numerous, and across industries, we are seeing at InfoVision, we are engaged with AT&T and a lot of other operators globally in terms of building solutions, right? And various, you think about something, and you should be able to build that, because it is not completely a defined use cases. You need to tweak them, you need to build them. I'll give you an example. We are completely recreating the whole retail store experience today. Especially post pandemic, people don't want to touch, they want to have a complete contactless experience, contactless checkout, faster checkout. We have built our own products and solutions which helps AT&T and other operators to deploy on by leveraging the power of 5G. But thanks for great insights, and we will touch upon some of the things around data and other things later. Kevin, to you, what is the best way to approach to deploy 5G without really impacting the user experience, right? Because everything is about user experience, the use cases, which are whether it's consumer or enterprises. We are looking at how users are interacting. So what are the best ways, what are the best practices which you should share with your audiences today?
Sure. I think one thing I want to loop back with what Michelle and Cliff were just saying. Totally agree there. However, there's some attributes to 5G that still leaves it a lot to desire from a consumer landscape standpoint. I'll give you an example. I'm in Salt Lake City right now, and 5G is deployed, going back to the question. However, there's still a lot of problems with latency and other aspects to consumers getting onto the network and doing something. So in a lot of cases where 5G is already deployed and well up to speed and doing well, when you build into a city that's just being deployed, for instance, I'm in Saratoga Springs, which is pretty near Salt Lake, but it's a new community. They just don't have the towers. There's a tower for 5G, but it can only handle a certain number of people, so you have to tune it properly. The cases where Cliff brought up is in most cases, and it is not necessarily a consumer network. It's more private networks that's deploying 5G that is allowed to a little bit more tuned to the fact of what it's actually talking to, who's talking to it, what equipment's talking to it. So it's a lot better circumstances than consumers. So to your question about what's the fastest way to deploy, I think the carriers of today really got it nailed down. They went through 3G, 4G, and 5G. And 5G, what we've seen is the fastest deployment in any technology hybrid between the technologies. I came from Texas Instruments back out of college, and we were working on 2G, 3G chips. So it would take 15, 20 years to deploy technologies, and now it's 5 to deploy technologies, 5 to 10 to fully deploy it. And so in practice, consolidation helps mobile operators increase network capacity by aggregating existing spectrum, exactly what Michelle brought up before. That's really how 5G is built, help deploy it as quick as possible. And it's not going to stop there. 6G is going to be even, I wouldn't call it easier. Carriers hate when you use the term easy because it is hard. but it's going to be a lot faster, more streamlined, a lot less issues in the marketplace for 6G because we learned so much on 5G deployment. And thankfully, worldwide, we're seeing a lot of 5G everywhere. Certain countries are just getting it out right now. For instance, India just deployed 5G on most of their handsets. iPhone just released their iPhone upgrade for 5G. So everybody's taking advantage of this wonderful technology. Both use cases that Michelle and Cliff brought up, totally agree with. So I'm just happy to see it out there and can't wait until we take it to the next level with 6G. But we're not going to talk about that today because that's too complicated. But yeah, it's deployment. I think we got it nailed, but going back to that spectrum, you must share, you must consolidate, and deploy it faster and reap the benefits off the back end.
Yeah. No, thanks, Kevin. Really, really great insights. But I'll start with you again. Do really consumer get the higher speed with 5G? What are your thoughts around that? Right, because there is low latency, faster speed. You talked about some of the areas where it has been deployed, how people are experiencing. Is it really so? What is the real myth about this? Is it a 5G like I sometimes see on my phone 5G Edge, but my speed is not that great? So, what are your thoughts around it?
Well, that's a great question. You see 5GE. I actually see, thanks to Cliff and AT&T, I see 5G Plus where I am. So we're getting advanced technologies out there. However, to the point, there's one thing about super fast. Like I can sit at my desk in my home and get about 300 to 500 megabits off of AT&T and 5G, which is fantastic, unheard of. However, not just with AT&T or any carrier, you still have the issues of latency within the network. And latency can be caused by many different factors inside the network. It's just not a network thing. It could be congestion on the network, some other issues. So even the promise of 5G and low latency is there. We still see a lot of issues in the marketplace with latency, and especially loaded latency, which is a key term. And if you're interested in understanding more, my colleague from Ookla just did a great webinar yesterday about loaded latency and to give some key facts around and figures around that. So that was a great lesson learned about 5G and that piece of it's just not about speed. It's also about that latency and consistency and reliability and what we at Ookla call responsiveness, which means is the network responsive to the consumer demand, to the consumer use cases? And there's a lot to be desired, but I think it's getting a lot better than it used to be. And we're just, it's the sky's the limit on the network changes and updates that can happen over the next 5 years. And, we're trying to march for this world of I would hate to call it, but I'll call it AR and VR. So in order to do those in 2023, 2024, we need to get those latency figures controlled and that experience a lot better.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for great. And I'll pick up, I've noted down loaded latency. I'll go and read about it. I learned it today. So thanks for great insights. But you also talked about some of the things around AR, VR and metaverse, which is coming up, the whole Web 3.0. The new technologies which are rolling out and how they can deploy. We are doing a lot of innovation around AR, VR at InfoVision. In fact, we are building one use case for AT&T today around how do we change the whole user experience around using AR, VR. So yeah, there are a lot of stuff. So Michelle, to you, how communities are going to leverage the power of 5G in the connected world? You touched upon a little bit earlier, but would love to hear more about how these things are rolled out at the community level.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on a couple of things that Kevin said, as well as Cliff, and kind of a shout out to the entire network operator community. This past year, I think the number is around $34 billion was invested in network build out infrastructure. So make no mistake, we are still very much in build out mode as we sort through latency issues and shore that up But to your point, Kevin, and I've been in the industry as long as you, it sounds like as well. I think it is moving faster than any other G, right? So faster than any other generation of deployment. The deployment itself is on its record speed for deployment. Now, when we look at, to everyone's point today, 5G and whatever 6G becomes, but 5G going from 4 to 5 is very use case dependent, right? So, 5G is not necessarily today, we don't know what the consumer change is going to be necessarily. How much faster do you need it in your hand? But the power of what is possible for communities, for industries, for verticals, for manufacturing, for advanced automated manufacturing, and then also how data is managed even at a community level, right? So communities will be able to, once we get through full 5G build out, both on RAN and core and latency in between, 5G still promises to be able to deliver residents and visitors, so those who live, work, and play in cities, for example, improved services specifically around, safety and quality of life. I talked about sensors and meters and cameras and things that are, maybe less scary than before because they're installed in a way that they're actually supporting and protecting entire communities. Changing the quality of life. While we're still in this network infrastructure build out, we're not waiting for, there's not an end date for it, it's a constant evolution. But smart utility systems, for example, are able to help communities monitor and manage resources like water and electricity, right? Help maintain their infrastructure in ways that, listen, the utility industry does not move very fast. And we have in many cases we have amazing utility providers across the country, but having them now add additional levels of connectivity on their grid and or water systems and monitoring and managing that infrastructure to help modernize those legacy systems is going to be really important role that 5G will help play. Also, smart water meters in terms of helping save millions of gallons of water a year. So maybe it's not super sexy, as a headline, but these are the major advancements that, industries and segments inside those industries are actually moving towards already today. Systems that include sensors, both for the water meters, also to help, detect leaks, movement, reverse flows, and more, right? 5G is able to help utilities manage their meters and sensors for distributed energy, right? So from a sustainability standpoint, we're moving towards more EV electric vehicles. That means the entire electricity management that we do today will change. Loads of those electricity will change. Typically, in the utility industry, I'm very close to utility industry right now, they're really leaning hard into the wireless industry subject matter experts to make sure they're making the right long-term decisions relative to maintaining this sort of change in our sustainability positions here in the US. Before, you would have, the middle of the night would be the quiet time for utility, rolling 12-hour blocks of time across the country. But now people are charging vehicles overnight. So the whole management of that the electric grid is changing, and the wireless technologies are there to support that. So super excited about how that is going to play out relative to sustainability going forward. And then just the vast volume of data. Again, I go back to think of millions, if not billions, of connected things that are transmitting, sometimes very binary data, sometimes data that's highly protected and needs to be highly protected based on the content inside that data that's transmitting. But at the end of the day, we've got a huge opportunity to make sure that we're managing that with as much security as possible so that those advanced analytics are able to help change the lives, quite frankly, of how our communities are going to work, how our businesses are going to work, and how our campuses are going to work relative to what 5G can offer.
Thank you so much. I think great insights, Michelle. Thank you so much. And Cliff, to you, just to taking what Michelle said right now, greater reliability, greater speed, latency. How is security aspect is being taken care, and AT&T is looking at from securing the network, right?
Yeah.
What are the insights you have on that?
Yeah, well, inherent in 5G is really a higher element of security. That's, I think, the 3GPP, and Michelle and Kevin may actually know this more than I do. But that inherent, it's essentially doubles the level of encryption that's available on the infrastructure and the network today. But at the end of the day, AT&T at the heart of these radio networks and where the attack vectors typically come from, it's really coming from the internet, right? And all of these cellular towers, believe it or not, they're connected by fiber. And eventually the traffic is going up to the public internet. The benefit of AT&T is we are one of the largest ISPs in the globe. And so we're seeing tons and petabytes of data traversing our infrastructure on a daily basis. Somebody once said it's kind of like almost 6 million downloads of 4K video per day. That's AT&T. What we're seeing in terms of internet traffic. Inherent in that is our ability to see anomalies and potential target vectors that may be happening. So we work with various other partners to make sure to inform them of that and essentially work hand in hand with those partnerships, and you can name who those partners are, to really combat this particular issues. And I'm going to go back to what Michelle stated earlier in terms of how this level of security is really important and how 5G, in terms of its inherent higher levels of encryption, is able to do. In the utilities, I've got the privilege of working with grid operators and utilities as well. They're really concerned about any impact to their infrastructure, whether it's a physical impact, like what happened with Duke Energy in North Carolina not too long ago, to the actual impact to what happens to the pipeline, right? So these IoT, the ability to proliferate so many sensors or video monitoring capabilities that can ingest a ton of data and get them encrypted, is really key in terms of driving the safety and security of the communities that we support. When smart cities, to what Michelle alluded to, AT&T's work with JB Smith in terms of the National Landing Project, where from the ground up, what does a smart city can look like while building fiber and 5G capabilities within this national landing community. And that's going to be an experiment of itself to see and innovate around 5G capabilities. But to Michelle's point, there's a lot of sensor monitoring and sustainability, and a lot of organizations today are actually putting a lot more sensors in their facilities to essentially measure their ESG scores, right? What are we doing in terms of sustainability? But I want to harken back to what Kevin had alluded to, because we do need to be mindful of the hype versus the reality of 5G. How it's being deployed across the country. I can only speak to how AT&T is deploying it across the country, and that's why the experiences might be a little bit different. The way we've approached a 5G deployment is really think of it as a chocolate chip cookie, right? What we're talking about is these low band that Michelle was talking about has higher, basically larger swaths of territory that it can cover, large rural areas, but it's not that much faster than 4G. So folks thinking that they can get 1 gig because their phone says 5G doesn't necessarily equate to that. They could be on the outskirts where it's only going to be that low band that has probably maybe 20% higher than what they can expect, maybe 50 to 60 megs at most that they can expect from that 5G. Then that's the investment that Michelle talked about. AT&T alone in the last two auctions spent nearly $33 billion to buy C-band or mid-band spectrum, right? And that deployment is that's the sweet spot. And I do agree with Michelle and Kevin. That's the sweet spot because that can still cover a fairly sizable area. I mean, we're talking miles, and still deliver the bandwidth and the latency. But there's a lot of other factors that goes into latency, but delivers the bandwidth and latency associated with that and the capacity needed for it. And that can go as much as 300 megs per second. And that's what, and again, want to differentiate. Sometimes different carriers call it different. That's what we call 5G plus on the AT&T network. And that's why Kevin was sharing kind of his experience on that 5G plus. Another 5G plus is, again, that's the term that we use for it, is the high band, which is the millimeter wave. And these are, call it NFL cities, right? High density, high metropolitan areas, stadiums in particular, right? So if you look at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you look at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, that's outfitted with 5G millimeter wave, both in the macro and there's some private DAS, this in-building DAS is in there as well. Those capabilities, we're talking speeds from 1 to 2 gigs. And those are really hyper fast, but you got to be really close to it. And again, that's if a few people are using it. But if you've got a stadium full of people, then the capacity for that, you're not going to be afforded that much. But those are the capabilities that 5G is enabling. And to further support the latency challenges that many organizations and their adoption of cloud, what we're doing is developing what we call 5G edge zones. We have 10 today. We end up 12 by the end of the year. We partnered with Google, Equinix. The key here is how do I bring compute capabilities and cloud capabilities as close to that cellular tower as possible, so it doesn't have to traverse regional cloud hubs in order for that processing to work. And those 5G edge zones that we partnered with Google and Azure today, and obviously with AWS being because they have cross connects in Equinix data centers, that actually helps speed things up in terms of the latency challenges that some applications have to make it closer to the cellular user as possible. So hopefully that covers, I know I covered a big swath there, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
That helps the community here.
No, thanks for giving a very broad perspective to all the audiences. And Kevin, I know I want you to cover 3 aspects which has been talked about, Michelle and Cliff. One is data. What do you see? How is the data being, the data is being generated and how it is being leveraged and how people can make best use of it. And then the other aspect is security on top of it. And third aspect, I'm giving you 3 key points, but from the deployment standpoint, is really what AT&T is trying to do. Cliff was explaining, low band, mid band, and high band deployment. Does it really mean that people are getting the best out of it, or there are other ways to look at it?
Yeah, so we'll start at data. Are you referring to the data we collect or data in general that the consumer uses?
No, both ways will be important for us to know.
Yeah, so I think we've seen, as Cliff brought out, a huge rise, a spike of data, right? And not only does it come from mobile phones, but a change in the industry towards fixed wireless access, FWA, what we call it in the industry. And that is where you have a dongle at your home that's connected to 5G, and inside your home, it's Wi-Fi connected to that dongle. And so I think earlier Michelle showed us the dongle that she's connected to. So those are the kind of things that really bring this internet, the speeds, the data to users in a more home-like situation where you're not relying on the big ISPs, you're more relying on your one carrier. And so that also introduced the second point of security and other issues that could result into whether it's credit card fraud or any other aspects of consumers really hate and fear that they get into. However, if you look at the technology of 4G, starting with and 3G to 5G, it's very secure. The pipe is secure. It's more secure than ISPs. So the way they built the network is focused first on security. So I think the industry and we as in consumers utilizing it need to really think about what actually they're going to be using when it comes to at-home connection, whether it's going to be fiber, a cable connection, or mobile. There's a lot of choices now. People used to complain about no choice, but there is a lot more choices thanks to the carriers bringing that technology to the home. And so we're very happy to see that. And with data, in the sense of what do we see at Ookla, the way Ookla collects our data, obviously we're directly corresponding to consumers, right? Consumers run our apps. We're on apps that actually collects data in the background to understand the consumer behavior and the speeds that they get and access to. It's very private, very secure, and it's one-to-one to the consumer. It's not data dumped from others. It's actually interfacing directly to consumers. And we get to see exactly what they see, exactly what they experience. And it's surprising to see how fast 5G hit consumers, back to that point about the rollout, and what they're using it for and how they're using it, all type of use cases. And it's more surprising to see the change in the industry around uploads, right? It used to be nobody used uploads, right? It's you download theory. Everybody was focused on download speeds. But what we're seeing in our data is upload is more important than ever because of what we're doing today is video conferencing at home, and video conferencing requires a huge amount of upload because all of our images are being sent somewhere. So you have to actually send it through an upload channel, and carriers are still in the asymmetrical. So you get very fast downloads, but with 4G and going into 5G, you're still reaching a theoretical limit or a cap on uploads. So that's something else that in our data from Ookla showing that that's more important to focus on as well. Not only latency that we talked about before, but the upload speeds and making sure that the next generation technologies and applications are actually more symmetrical when it comes to data interfacing, especially when we talked about metaverse and the upload. When you're chatting with somebody one-to-one in a 3D world and the user movements and where you're going, that has to be as fast with low latency than the speeds coming down and showing where the other user is. So all those scenarios are really requiring that symmetrical view, which today Wi-Fi is the only one that has that capability, but I'm seeing more and more technology being deployed, 5G standalone and other technologies that actually getting it equal so we can get those scenarios. And what was your third point? I may have talked too long on the first two.
No, I think you covered it. You covered it well. I think you covered all the three aspects of all the 3 points which I said. But I want to change the discussion on another topic here with respect to there is a lot of debate happening between wireless broadband to the fiber broadband, right? And what is best? Where do you get best? What is consumers are expecting from this? So, Michelle, I'll start with you, and I would love to hear your views around your thoughts around this.
So, and the questions around broadband versus
so
wireless
wireless
broadband
versus fiber broadband.
Yeah, so we need them both, I guess, if I were to sort of summarize it. You can't have, I think Cliff talked about this before. I mean, you have to have broadband fiber for backhaul or the core for the final transmission from wireless networks, one, right? And there's a very important role for wireless broadband because we do have this huge change in how people are consuming their wireless. One, coming out of the pandemic, and then two, just the evolution of what is possible with wireless broadband. I will say, I when I think about things like, the infrastructure bill, and, it's very much focused on broadband and other broadband bills. And I don't do anything with policy. That's not my role at CTIA. We have amazing people who do that. But, we're probably, as a country, we're probably not going to dig a hole to every American in the country. So it isn't plausible or feasible or efficient to think that we're going to have a broadband connection for every single endpoint where the user is, which is a really important role for wireless broadband, to extend that connectivity and working together, not against. It's not a us, them. It's a, how does the whole connectivity map look? We need Wi-Fi, we need broadband, we need wireless, like true just wireless networks, and we need wireless broadband. So with all of that, it's really use case dependent on where that's being deployed, which is where, the work that Kevin and his team's doing in terms of creating maps and understanding where all the connectivity is today, understanding where all the infrastructure build out is today, where it's going, all the hard work that AT&T and the other operators across the country are doing to make sure they're serving their customers where they are today, where they think they might be tomorrow, because they don't sit in one place all the time. So it's, and to the defense of the network operators, they're trying to make sure that they've got everything where the use cases are, not just the consumer, I've got internet in my pocket, wireless internet in my pocket, but literally the landscape of where the use case for even 5G or critical infrastructure that's going to need to rely on, what I like to say in the wireless industry is, the wireless networks are literally built secure by design. And it's more than 35 years now that we've been evolving this same technology, layering on additional security on top of the same foundation of which it was built. So, and I don't know any other use case in any other industry that can say that. So I do think that, we need them all. Selfishly, I want mid-band cellular, because I know that the unlocking capabilities that are going to be made available, that people just can't even, not necessarily even get their head around what's possible, because we're still in the middle of, infrastructure build out relative to that capability. But, my short/long answer is we need it all. We just have to figure out how we work best together as efficiently as possible at making it all available.
So, Ashish, if you don't mind, I'm gonna add to that, because Michelle's absolutely right, and I can just only speak with AT&T, right? AT&T is all about fiber and 5G, That's basically what it is. But it is very costly to build fiber in every single place, any rural area of the United States. So you have to really be cognizant about where your investments need to be when you deliver to the fiber, high density areas. So a use case that I typically see in the financial industry is the adoption of SD-WAN, for instance, right? A financial institution in their banks are moving away from the traditional MPLS infrastructure that we have today to leveraging the power of broadband using SD-WAN devices that can balance between broadband providers. Now, the last mile is always the biggest issue, right? Whether it's the last mile to your home on where you can get broadband, or the last mile in a business where fiber, unfortunately, gets cut because there's a lot of digging that happens, right? So many of the financial institutions today that rely on the uptime and connectivity to their locations or to their branches are deploying fiber broadband and wireless broadband on an SD-WAN platform that's on and on for both sides, that actually load balances, because now you've got capacity on both sides being able to deliver to that location. And should fiber, because fiber unfortunately does get cut and has some issues, then at least you can now piggyback on the wireless infrastructure to be able to still have that data flow through, that critical data that you need. So that's why it's really important for both. And so that's kind of like, truthfully, that's what's happening for me today. I've had some issues on my fiber broadband at home. I'm actually on a 5G phone right now talking to you guys. So it works.
Yeah. Kevin, your thoughts before I go into the, we have some questions from the audiences, but before I go, your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I just want to take a step back and really, we all need to think about this. We're bringing out these technologies. To Cliff's point, it's difficult and it's hard, but to Michelle and my point, we have all these options. We never had these many options before to connect and make everything live for us. We had a one connection, which we relied on mobile, and then we had to go home, rush home, connect to our ISP, and do something that we needed to do and we couldn't do on a mobile phone. Now we can go anywhere and do anything like Cliff is doing today on a mobile phone. And also, we also have to think of us global world, thanks to, again, AT&T, because that's my carrier. When I travel anywhere, South Korea, Japan, Spain. I use the international day plan, and I get the same technologies in those countries that the consumers have in those countries. And we just have to stop and think. We're in a wonderful time for technology, and it's just getting better. So I'll just end with that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, guys. We have a couple of questions, and I would request every speaker to give their point of view around this, so that our audiences can get the wider view. The first question is: we see that enterprise sites are still connected mainly by wired connections. What can telecom do to accelerate use of 5G? I think we covered this a lot, but still, we would love to have your views. So, Cliff, I'll start with you.
So, bottom line, in any location, we basically work with our radio antenna network engineers, right? We have actually a mapping in terms of proliferation of 5G within a particular geography. So the first thing I would suggest is, reach out to your carrier, find out if they have maps of your area. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean how the signal, or basically the spectrum, propagates inside your building, because you may have a lead type of building where it's a little bit more challenging for the signal to do. So, but we can work through that with either microcells, or we basically build in-building DAS solutions to propagate that signal within the building. But my first recommendation is talk to your carriers, have them map out where you're located, and they'll be able to tell you, this is a 5G spot that we have, and then they get some engineers to go inside your building, take some readings, and see that location of the building to see how the throughput and latency would be if they connected broadband. And we do that today. We even do proof of concepts with companies who are thinking about that, and we are willing to actually help out.
Sure. Michelle, your thoughts?
Yeah, so everything Cliff said. I think so. We have lots of working groups here at CTIA that focus on various verticals and domains within one to create that sort of subject matter expert transfer of knowledge inside the trade. So it all sort of starts in making sure that we're all talking to each other in terms of the solutions that are being discussed, offered, and deployed. So we do have a smart buildings working group inside of our overall, body of work relative to our smart cities initiative. And, to Cliff's point, you have a lead building whose goal is to make sure the building is as efficient as possible, which means there's massive densification of the materials of the building itself, which makes the propagation of things like wireless and RF sometimes challenging, but there are great, I think, RF teams that are out there trying to help these folks that have enterprise locations understand what's available, the options inside, whether it's a DAS system, additional repeaters, sort of what does that look like based on what those inhabitants inside that building need, and how they're using the wireless connectivity. I would like to see us move to a smart, connected building as a thing that people can achieve, whether it's a certification or some sort of recognition, but because I want to show folks actually how they can do that effectively. I do think it's going to be really important going into the, again, the build out of making sure that everybody's got the connectivity that they need based on how they're going to use it. So we focus very much that exact question in the how to inside our working groups to help educate folks that are managing, whether they're wall to carpet or industrial building spaces, right? They're having RF conversations in a way they maybe never did before. Before, you called somebody, had it wired up once for a hard wire, and then you just didn't have to do anything about it, right? But now you've got to consider other things. So how do we help educate those that are managing those facilities, buildings, and locations relative to smart connected buildings?
Thank you. Kevin?
No, I don't need to add anything else. Both answers were spot on. I would just add in the service providers. There, again, back to the options. There's a lot of options of deploying technologies within a building. So it just doesn't have to be your Wi-Fi dongle and wired down to the floor and cost, a lot of money. There's so many options, especially with these buildings nowadays, that is constructed in a way that RF signals do propagate really well. And if not, like Michelle's saying, put a DAS in.
Thank you. We have one more question from audiences, and what are some unexpected challenges telecom have faced as they build 5G and their supporting networks? Kevin, I'll start with you on this.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of transitions. I came from RootMetrics. I was the CEO of RootMetrics, and we were acquired by Ookla. So we did a lot of drive testing. We did live drive testing from a 4G to a 5G interface. So we've seen the hurdles that some build-outs acquire, and most of the problems are just coverage in general of taking out the 4G, replacing it with 5G, and making sure that the 5G is resilient enough for the people that are there. I think another challenging is the unexpected nature of people getting on the 5G network and using it for what it needs to be used for. So that's another thing, that factor of the challenges of the unexpected growth of data on these technologies. And it's really being driven not by consumers, because consumers will just do what consumers do. It's driven by the likes of TikTok and YouTube and Netflix, Hulu. I can name hundreds of streaming services, and that's the issue. There's hundreds of options for streaming your content, audio, and playing music, and every single person's doing it on a mobile phone. Like myself, I did the Spotify year in review, and I did 13,000 hours of music. When you start compiling that, that's a lot of data, and that's really the biggest telecom challenge, is just the pleasant, unexpected rise of data.
Yeah. Michelle, to you.
Yeah, so I would agree with what Kevin says in terms of the consumption, and I think we've only just started. So, if that says anything in terms of the velocity that we do expect in the next few years. I had a very big aha moment this last spring, I will say, sitting in a room in a region, in a state with CIOs, CTOs representing what they're trying to deploy and or discuss around smart city, various kinds of smart city deployments, right? So it's very broad, lots of things from between safety, public services, to the city actually managing the city itself, or the services that it's offering those who live, work, and play in the city. And Ookla was in the room with us that day. A couple carriers were in the room with us. So I brought some subject matter experts from the industry with me for this conversation. And the burning question after the most amazing sort of transfer of conversation, the better part of a day, was, 3:00 in the afternoon. The burning question was, how are we going to close digital divide, right? So it's a very important, it's a political, like, I stay out of politics, but it's a political question. There's a inherent entitlement for how do we make this possible. The industry, I will say, is working extremely hard at making this possible. But at the end of the day, when you get into a city, the cities know where their holes are. The cities want industry to tell, the cities don't always know, I should say, don't always know where their holes are. They want industry to tell them where their holes are. Industry is waiting for the city to tell them where their holes are. So we're asking the same question to each other and expecting each other to actually answer it. So this is where the great work that Ookla is doing with mapping, with, again, you can say there's a hole in a valley, 2 miles from the central business district, but if there's nobody there that needs the connectivity, that's not ever going to be the priority until somebody raises their hand and says, I need this, whether it's for economic development, because I'm bringing in a facility and I need to prove that I've got connectivity there in order to do something for the city. You have to be in like two-way conversation. And I think industry needs to lean into those that are making these decisions. And in some cases, they're new groups of people, not new to their business, but new groups of people having different kinds of conversation with industry. And how can we sort of better facilitate that? I think it's a challenge today. I think we're getting better at it. I'm trying to get with hundreds of people in my working groups, I'm trying to get them to have better listening conversations and better conversations, asking more specific questions in terms of, I'm not just here to sell you, whatever my product is, which we want everybody to do that. That's great. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're serving the needs, but the needs need to be articulated in a way that industry can respond. And so I think that if we can close the gap on that, that will help us eliminate some challenges as we go through sort of, how cities and communities are going to leverage some of these 5G solutions and get to the business of closing the digital divide. The digital divide is not intentional. The networks are built where need is, but we need to have a different conversation about the new needs today.
Yeah. No, thank you. Great insights. And Cliff, to you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to piggyback on Michelle's point because, let's face it, there's regulatory hurdles, and obviously that's the communication that needs to occur there. There's investments, and some of the times the carriers will need to make the investments where they're going to have a quick, immediate return on said investment, right? But there is that digital divide. And I think what happened during the pandemic and then subsequently afterwards, what the future of work looks like, the demand sets now, because we can actually have a lot of efficiencies working remotely, the ability for folks to work in very remote areas would then, to Michelle's point, create the demand for higher investments in those areas that will then deliver a return on that investment. But the dialogue is so critical between, it's really going to be a public-private partnership to be able to get this to completely work across our country, at least here in the U.S. And I think there's good work by many great people who are really making this happen. It's going to take some time, and there's going to be some challenges associated with it, as I mentioned. But I'm very encouraged because the dialogue's happening, and that's the good part. The dialogue is happening, Ashish.
Sure. No, thank you so much. I think thank you so much. It was a great insights from all the speakers. I think it was a great session, and it was my privilege hosting you all today. Really, I personally learned a lot of things, and I'm sure our audiences would have gained a good insights and a good learning, a great perspective experience, which you three of you have shared. With that, we will close. We are on top of the hour. We will close the session for today. I hand it over to Nitin.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
It was an exciting discussion, and I'm sure crowd loved it. I loved it. And, so I'll just wrap it up so that, easy for our platform to host this. We would like to thank our community partners, speakers, and attendees who took effort and came together for enriching knowledge through this forum. As we had great set of panel speakers who came together to share thoughts, love to have you again next time as well. Just for your information, today's event was broadcasted in the YouTube and Facebook page of our company. So all of you can go and see the recording anytime. Please log on to our website and like the social media channels. We'll be sharing lots of knowledge sharing topics, details, announcement of next events, and much more, which will help you register and attend the same. Also, we would like to thank all our partners, especially InfoVision, who is our knowledge and innovation partner, and Digit7 technology partner. Digit7 also have a great innovation lab of 15,000 square feet in Richardson. And any one of you are dropping by can always go to the office and have a look to feel that. To understand more in depth, connect with them, and to suggest, all of you can go through their website, which is infovision.com and digit7.io, and closely liaison with them. Further, there are lots more in store for next year as well, with focus on a lot of emerging industries like banking, financial, insurance, telecom, retail, healthcare, supply chain, manufacturing, energy, utility, and so on. So request all of you to keep connected with us and enjoy the learning. From all of us at AI CoreSpot, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance to all of you. Thanks, and do take good care of yourself. Have a lovely day and weekend ahead. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.